Welcome to another Social Tree LinkedIn Live. It's a happy Friday to all your viewers out there. Really excited for this live today. Remember, it is live, so we welcome your questions during the show. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to effectively sell through a recession.
Now, recessions are never a fun time for anyone involved in business, but it is a natural part of the business cycle. And today's session, we're going to be talking to someone who is a master sales professional to hopefully equip you with the skills to sell effectively through a recession.
Yeah, an economic downturn is never easy, but we're thrilled to be joined today by David Thomson, who is an expert when it comes to sales and the influence of science and persuasion. David Thomson, DT, has only known hard times. He was the number one mortgage broker in the 1990s. And if you remember the 1990s, that was an incredibly tough time for the real estate business. And this is when this legend was the number one mortgage broker in the UK. He then went on to have his own estate agent business / mortgage broker. He then got an exit on that business. He then had his own insurance company, got another exit. He's built and exited multiple business. He's done it in really, very tough times. He's not your traditional businessman. He hasn't come from an academic background. Before the age of 10, he was in 9 kind of foster homes, was a member of the army. He's dyslexic, so he's not your stereotypical entrepreneur, but he's been able to really break through the ceilings. He's done some amazing things, and we're excited to learn from him how to effectively sell through recession. So welcome, David. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Wow, what an introduction. So first thing, thank you very much, guys, for putting this on today. I'm sure I'll be able to share some pearls of wisdom and some things that you'll like, and also some practical things that you'll be able to implement to make your business better in a recession than what it was before a recession. And I'll share some stories with you of personal experiences that I've had with my business when I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Life's really tough. And then turn it around and go, I hope it stays like this forever, because it keeps all the people that aren't as good out of the game. So yeah, we'll share some stories and it'll be fun.
Yeah, great. And you've worked with us before as well, helping Social Tree, improve our sales process. And we found that extremely beneficial. But it'd be great to start off just hearing a bit about your story and how you got into the science of influence and persuasion, because a lot of our viewers out there, perhaps new to the topic, haven't heard of, influence persuasion, where it's come from. So it'd be great to hear your story and how you got into the field.
Yeah, sure. So my background, as you've said, I'm not your typical academic that's got into persuasion and influence or into sales in a normal route, in a straightforward route. By the time I was 9 years old, I'd lived in 10 years old, I'd lived in 9 different houses. I'd been to 5 different schools. My stepfather was a wife beater and abuser, so one of those houses was a children's home. And at 16 I left school and I joined the army, and then became a boxing champion in the army, which was really good for me because it meant I was tough. 2 things I wanted to be as a kid, because we were so poor, was I wanted to be rich and I wanted to be tough, and luckily managed to do quite well on both those fronts. When I left school at 21, I became so I worked in a shoe factory, and then I read a book that changed my life that I'd recommend everybody reads and implements, and it's called The Success System That Never Fails. And so for me, sales is all about a system. It's about how do you put in a system into your sales to make sure that you can build something consistently. I read that book sitting in the boxes in Dr. Martin's shoe factory, the yellow boots that those boots for the thing. I sat there and I thought, wow, is there really a system for sales? And I've got a job as a mortgage consultant. Now, at the time, I couldn't even spell mortgage. I didn't know how to T in it. I'm dyslexic. But anyway, I get this job as a mortgage consultant, this young 20-year-old lad in 1990. And when I started, it was a recession. It was 1990. Interest rates were like 17%. And I get this job as a mortgage consultant and as a financial advisor. And what was really cool about that time was I didn't know that things were tough. So when you start in a tough time, you don't know that there's any other time there. So starting out, and my first starting point and what I'd recommend for everybody was I learned about a positive mental attitude. And I'd say to you, mindset is everything. When you're going to go into a recession, you need people that are going to have, as Carol Dweck would quote it, a growth mindset. Because you're always going to have an adversity, you're always going to have beliefs, and you're always going to have consequences. But it's about what you do when things go wrong. And that's really what this is all about. How do you make sure that you can implement when things aren't going well, when everybody wants to, do their own thing? How do you make sure that you get them to do your thing? So that's what I'd like us to be able to talk about and just share with you some of the stories and some of the, adversities, but I've turned around and managed to change my life, my family's life, and, put my kids through nice schools and lived in big houses and stuff like that.
Yeah. When you were working with Social Tree, I found that really inspirational was positive mental attitude and having the right mindset. And it's something that is definitely overlooked. And I still, to this day, always try to think about, mindset and being in a positive space. Can do, will try. So yeah, that was very, very beneficial. But in terms of obviously we put together this live today to kind of help sales reps, because a lot of sales people out there, you're thinking we're going towards an economic downturn. I still got my number to hit. Some of you are supporting families out there, the consequences are real and you've got to get results ultimately. And, you can't afford to be in this, you've got to be at the top of your game going into 2023. Only the best are going to make it. So could you just, explain a bit more about influence and persuasion? Like, what is it all about, and why should salespeople be kind of taking it seriously? What's it? Because you studied with Robert Cialdini, isn't it?
When I suppose if I tell you a little bit of a personal story about going into a recession. So my first job was a financial advisor. I got this job as a mortgage advisor, and I'd been working in a shoe factory, earning £130 a week. And the next thing you know, I'm this mortgage advisor, and I managed to persuade a couple of people to do mortgages with me, and I earned £500 in the first week. And I was earning £130 a week in the shoe factory. So I'm like, oh my God, how do I keep this? So I started studying everything that sat behind persuasion and influence, because I didn't want to copy anybody else. And so one of the people I studied was a guy called Robert Cialdini, the world's leading social psychologist on the topic of influence. Another one was John Bandler, Richard Grindler, and just started studying what sat behind sales. And I built myself up from being a nobody to understanding all of the component parts that make people good at sales. And so for me, that was really useful for my own success. Then I created a business, and we got lucky. We reversed Google's algorithm with one of my insurance businesses, and we had 10,000 leads coming through every month in 2008. We're sitting there getting loads of leads for life insurance, mortgages, making 200,000 a month. And I'm like, I've made it. I bought a Ferrari. I got a big house, £1.28 million mortgage. I've got kids in private school. And then in 2008, what happened to me wasn't the recession in 2008. It was Google did a Google dance. And our leads that were our fantastic leads, 10,000 a month coming through, switched off like that. Like what's just about to happen in a minute here, right? So what's going to happen is people are going to stop inquiring. And what do you do when the phones stop ringing? What do you do? What do people do? And that's the question now. What do we do? What do we do? So here's what we did. The first thing is you got to keep your best people. You have to keep your best people. That's the number one thing. And the second thing is, if you're going to keep your best people, you need to keep them engaged. And what I mean by engaged is you have to train your people to be superstars, because you can't get away with average anymore. Gone are the days when you just ring people up and they'll just buy. Your half chances need to turn into whole chances. So what I started doing in 2008 was teaching my people everything that I knew about persuasion and influence. And so we put together a course whereby every single week, we met every week, so we stayed together. And from Monday morning, it was always scores on the doors, and then let's talk about how we can be more successful. So we met regularly, and that's the first thing I'd say to you with your people. Meet with them regularly, and then also put some pegs in the ground, i.e. accountability and training. So what do we want to do in the next 7 days? And it's short sprints. Right, what are the things that we need to do to put in place? So, Max, what are you going to do? And you say, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Okay, right, great. How are you going to do it? Tell me. What do you need from me? And so everybody started pulling together, and we put together a plan. We put together a 12-month plan to evolve. And what we did was we worked out there wasn't going to be the amount of inquiries. And you're going to see it now. There'll be less inquiries than what there were before. So you need to do something else with your existing people. And that's how to do more with your existing customers. Right, how do you do more than one thing with your existing customers? And when you do that, what happens? Right, so you might think, well, there's nothing more we can do with our existing customers. Well, loads of people have thought that, but you're not thinking hard enough. Google worked out how to do more with their existing customers, and they invented Gmail. And then they worked out how to do so. And so everybody can always do more. So how do we do more with existing customers? That's one thing. And what we started doing every single week, week in, week out, was we made sure that everybody knew the score. And what I mean by the score was the score that took Dave Thomson from the kid that was in the children's home with the alcoholic abusing father and all the rest of it, was dyslexic, left school, no qualifications, to the top financial advisor in the country. We started teaching all of our people, I started teaching all of my people, right, okay, this is what the deal is with positive mental attitude, which is the right mental attitude in any given set of circumstances. This is what framing looks like that I learned from Bandler and Grindler. This is what influence is all about. Here are the 6 influence principles, and here we apply them. So then I'll send you off on your travels for a week, and you go and do what you did last week, right? Doing more with your existing customer, because I could work out how to do more than what you would, because I'd be better. And then you come back and you tell me, how'd you get on last week? And you say, I did this much rather than this much. And I say, okay, what do you think was missing? I don't know. I'll go, okay, let's all go through, work as a team. And then what we do is we work out how to use the principles of influence and persuasion to fill in the gaps. So meeting every week was essential from our perspective. Developing your people was essential from our perspective. And guess what? We made £1 million profit, right, in a terrible market. And if the market had stayed the same and we hadn't lost the leads, would have probably made less, right?
Yeah.
Would have probably made less. So you can actually make more in tough times by developing your people. And I'll tell you what it did. It pulled everybody together. And that's the first thing. Pull your horns in, get your people better, and get focused on what's going to move the needle. And then put in some brilliant training, not good training, brilliant training. So tap into, like, what does Max Hannon know about social selling? What do you know about it? Get you in, pay you to come in and talk to the people. So we all learn that and we work on that.
There's I really like the principles of, I think, sales, of overcoming difficulty, resilience. There's kind of hard and fast principles which never change really in recession. But I think what happens in recessions is that there's a market realignment, and the rules or the tactics evolve and change as the market evolves.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting you talk about those first order principles, because it feels like regardless of the changes happening in the market, if you have a codified set of principles and a philosophy, then if the world goes into social media, or if there is a realignment to the metaverse, or if there's a realignment to now everyone's just engaging in a virtual world, the principles are still the same. And it's interesting you hear that whether it's 1970, 1990, 2008, those principles which you're talking about are agnostic to the technology and the environment. Because people always say, well, the world's different now. The world's not the same. Oh, it's not. Yeah, it's all easy for you to say, but things have changed. But I think that's it's a cop out to say that, isn't it?
It is, and here's why. Yeah. Right. So I worked with the world's leading social psychologist. Was one of 6 people in the world that could teach both persuasion and persuasion, which is really learning about cognitive biases, shortcuts that we take as human beings. Here's what I mean by that. Right. If somebody comes to you and they make a request from you and they say, oh, I'll tell you what, James, can you do this and this and this for me? And you don't like them, what do you say?
No.
You say no. But if somebody comes to you and it's in your power to do it, and they say, can you do this for me? And you can do it for them, what do you say if you like the person?
Yes, you can agree to it.
Yeah. So the principle of liking is as long as the day, it's as true as the day is long. It's black and white. It's just as so. But often people don't know the things that create liking, right? We don't look and think, how can I get this person to like me? And you can get the pretty gene, like you got the pretty. Both you boys.
Well, thank you. I do try.
He's using the tactics of us. It's fun with DT because he is persuasive. He flatters you, so you've got to be careful.
So physical attractiveness creates liking. But so does cooperation. How do you get this person to cooperate with you? What is it that you can do to get them to cooperate with you? How does it you can give this person some genuine praise? How is it that, you say, well, I can get them to like me, right? And I can give them some praise. What is it you could do to help this person? Can you use the principle of reciprocation? Can you do this person a favor? And it doesn't always have to be money. So you think, what can I do to help this person that's in front of me? So if you walk into a room and you've got a client, or you're on a call, or you're sending them a message, what can you do to genuinely benefit that person? And that should be the first thing you think about. Because if you benefit that person out there, they'll want to benefit you, they'll want to help you, because they'll feel like they owe you. And we say yes to people that we owe. And so too many times when we're thinking about strategies or tactics or techniques. We don't rely on the cognitive biases, the shortcuts that we could utilize that maximize our opportunity for people to say yes. And also in a tougher market, these things don't become desirable, they're essential.
Could you just quickly, because I think Max, you in the question did say this, but I think for the advantage of the audience, could you outline the principles of influence? Because there's 6, but it'd be great if you could outline them. Yeah. So
within the social psychology circuit, within with what I learned from Cialdini and what I know about from neurolinguistic programming, there's principles of influence, universal laws, and things that you can use if you're trying to persuade, if you're trying to influence somebody. Some of them are more powerful online than they are face-to-face, and some are more powerful face-to-face than they are online. Like, for example, the principle of social proof. Yeah. Right? That's massive online. If you're looking to make a decision, that's going to be the most important influence principle. Because if you're uncertain and you don't know what to do, you don't look inside for answers and think, well, what else do I know? You look out for the voices, the opinions of experts. You think, well, these guys know about social selling. They're clearly experts. I'm going to speak to those people. And also, if you've got a massive following, right, then I know that you're experts, right? So ultimately, we're looking for a following. And if you've got a following, then it makes a big difference. And if we haven't got a following, then we need to create a following. The principle of authority says, if I'm unsure and I don't know what to do, like let's imagine I go out and I'm in a car accident on the way home, and unfortunately somebody dies, and then it goes to court. What I don't do is start digging out the law books and thinking, how can I work out how to defend myself? I'll go and look for an expert, a lawyer, even if I know I'm totally innocent, because if I get it wrong, I could go to prison, right? So they're 2 principles for overcoming uncertainty. But if you overcome uncertainty and you persuade somebody you're an expert, or alternatively you're a following, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody will buy from you, right? Yeah. Because they might not like you.
Yeah, we apply that a lot in the work that we do online and like in social selling and stuff, social proof and authority. And I think what's so interesting about how the sales world is evolving is that people do actually look at you on social media to get that social proof and authority. Like, you know, a lot of people who are selling digitally, their first interactions will happen on LinkedIn, and they'll be looking at you on your profile to see, who is this person? Yeah, do they have a large following? Because there's this thing about trust as well. Like, you might say that you're the world expert in this, but if ultimately people want to see they've got that social proof coming from another, it's backed up by other people.
Well, that's really interesting when you talk about trust. So one of the biggest things, if you are an expert in your field, is how can you persuade somebody, not that you're an expert, you can persuade that, but how can you be trusted instantly? And one of the things that you can do is you can mention a weakness. Right, so when we used to run our mortgage business, right, we wanted people to trust us instantly. And so what we'd do is we'd mention a weakness and we'd say, look, if you're looking for a financial advice firm that's brilliant at what they do, that does all the financial advice, like inheritance tax planning, investments and all that, don't come to us because we're rubbish at that stuff. But if you want somebody that's a specialist that knows everything there is to know about a mortgage, well, we can tell you everything on mortgages because that's what our superpower is. That's what we do better than anybody else.
Yeah.
The fact that you're prepared to go belly up and tell them what you're rubbish at first, and then tell them, then pivot on the word but, makes a massive difference. And Avis did this, whereby they were always the second rental car company to Hertz for years, and then they came out with Avis. We're second in rental car companies, but we try harder, and you can Google it. The Avis We Try Harder put their profits up by 900% because that meant their trust was there.
Yeah,
and so. Those 2 principles, the principle of social proof and the principles of authority, help overcome uncertainty. But what they don't necessarily do is create motivation or action. And that's probably what you need more right now, is how do we get people motivated to act? Because they're stalling. They're going, let's wait for 23. Right, let's wait for 23. Let's wait and see what happens with this next Conservative government. Let's wait until your granny gets off the bus. So how do you create motivation and action? That's the magic.
The interesting thing is, I mean, we've spoken about this before, about is there a fundamental psychological shift to digital influence over face-to-face? And I think that we can all agree that there isn't. You have a few dinosaurs who say, no, social media isn't a thing. So, you know, the internet's not a fad. But you know what I mean? There's a small pool, but the majority of people now understand that actually, in order to be successful, really in particularly B2B, but anything, you have to be online. You have to be on social media. But one thing I think which is interesting is a lot of the principles, particularly what you spoke about, are completely valid. And whilst we're all humans interfacing through a screen, do you think there is a large difference between digital influence in terms of using digital where you're not actually in person, you're not this binary one-to-one communication you have in a sales environment to, say, an environment where you're, say, on LinkedIn, where you have this big audience, and it's a very different and in some ways novel way of people interact. So I'm wondering how you differentiate between digital and real life influence and whether they are fundamentally different.
So online influence isn't my superpower, but luckily I've got a buddy who's brilliant at online influence. He wrote the books on online influence, and I work with him. His name's Bas Wouters. Check him out. He's much better at online influence. When it comes to offline influence, I can tell you everything when it comes to the people. And I'd love to say to you, I'm brilliant at online influence, but that's your superpower. That's what you boys do. You do that better than I'll ever do. Here's what I can tell you, though, that's true with regards to influence. The principle of consistency and commitment is one of the most important things that you'll ever learn when it comes to, if you're trying to engage an audience and you're trying to get people to work with you, you have to be consistent, especially now, even online or offline. If you're not consistent, it comes up. And politicians, you know, they look at it, you know, you look at, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. And you look and you're going, he's inconsistent. We look for consistency, especially in England, because in England, the biggest and the most important influence principle is the principle of consistency. My word is my bond. I said I'll do it, so I'll do it. However, if you look at Asia, the biggest principle is authority. We look for an expert. If you look at Spain, the biggest influence principle is the principle of liking. What do my peers, my colleagues and all that think of you? In America, it's reciprocity. Have you done me a favour? So there's different principles of influence. One of the biggest things with regards to this country in terms of holding people consistent for commitments they make is thinking about the right questions you can ask up front so that you can get people to make commitments up front so they want to work with you ahead of time because you've helped them put the words in their own mouth by asking the right questions. And so there was a guy called Socrates who said, if I ask a prospect...
Just a bloke.
Yeah, well, Socrates, 2,500 years ago. He said, if I ask a prospect a question or a series of questions to which he or she will readily agree, and then ask a concluding question based on those agreements, I'll receive a desirable response. So I'll ask you a question. Do you want to be successful in 23? Do you think you can get away with doing nothing? You know you can't get away with doing anything. Do you want to keep your salespeople? You go, yeah, of course we want to keep our salespeople. Do you want your business to grow and capitalise on the opportunity while everybody else is asleep, or contract? I want it to grow. So you start asking questions and you ask them to tell you more about it. So if you think about the right questions up front and people start making commitments to you, they're way more likely to act because that motivation comes from inside that person. I've said it, I meant it, I'm going to do it. Whereas too many times we think we can rely on a website to do it for us and do the heavy lifting. Alternatively, we think, hold on a minute, maybe it will do it itself. Gone are those days. It might have done it in 21. In 22, you might have touched, you got away with it. In 23, it's 23 and me. Me's about 23 and me in terms of my consistency. What questions do I need to ask to hold people consistent?
Yeah. And I think going into, obviously, an economic downturn, potentially into a recession, price becomes a much bigger issue. So a lot of people thinking about price, thinking about ROI. But, as you've kind of explained to me, out and about offline, that price is very subjective. Like it's very much a very subjective thing when you start to compare it to prices of other objects. I'd be interested to hear about because a lot of people are going to be getting into those price negotiations.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is price is absolutely an issue and it's completely important, but it's important with one aspect. When you narrow things down to one issue, it'll always come down to price. Who's the cheapest? Right, that's what it comes down to. But if you can get more than one issue onto the table, i.e., this is here's what we're going to do for you. We will do this. We'll give you the guarantee. We'll make sure that if you're not 100% happy with it, we'll guarantee a transformation. If you put more than one issue on a table, then price moves out the window. So a great example of that is, let's imagine you're selling something that I know something about, which was life insurance, right? And we used to sell life insurance with all the different companies. And let's say Tesco came out with a life insurance that was £10. And people say, well, I've got my price from Tesco's, it's £10. And you'd say, well, okay, we've got Scottish Widows here, they're £12. People think, well, I don't want to go with Scottish Widows, I want to go with Tesco's because they're £10. But then you ask me, you say, well, when you buy insurance, what are you buying? What are you buying?
A secure peace of mind.
You're buying a promise, right? How long have Scottish Widows been keeping their promises?
A long time.
Yeah, forever and a day, right? 150 years. Tesco started doing it last week, and you go, okay. And if you buy with Scottish Widows, if they offered you a discount on a gym membership, right, is that a benefit to you or not? Do you go to the gym and say, yeah, well, that's a benefit. So now all of a sudden you've got another issue on the table. Do you want to put your policy into trust? If they did that free of charge, does that matter? So we need to think about more than one issue. And one of the biggest things in a recession is if you want to get price off the table, you need to make sure that you're doing more than one thing for a customer. And then really think through asking the right questions to make them consistent. consistent. So therefore, when they're looking at yours, they're not comparing it to that. They're looking at theirs like that, and they're looking at yours over here, and they go, this is something completely different. And you move it. So it's that who moved my cheese? You move the cheese to make it so yours is so much better, so much different. And when they feel differently about yours because you ticked more than one of the boxes, you don't narrow it down to one issue.
That I remember that lesson from your training about the strings,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
because it's so important to have. If you're only going on price, you're done.
You're toasted.
And I always remember that for our own business, saying that, you know, okay, you can do things you can go on the internet now, you can find the cheapest product. But as you said, when it comes to things like LinkedIn or protecting your personal brand, there's a reputational premium on your brand, which is, if you're, to be honest with you, if someone's negotiating me down, say that if you don't value reputation, if you're willing to basically let your reputation go that low, then maybe we're not the best fit. You know,
Why do people buy? Why do people buy?
in what sense? Just generally?
In any sense, why do people buy?
There's a need.
No, they buy because they feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Right. They don't buy because you said something. They buy because you made them feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So if you make them feel like over here about you, and somebody else makes them there, and that's better, they'll buy from you.
Yeah.
You know. So it's not about the price. It's about making sure that you don't narrow it down to an issue, and you make them feel differently. And so you need to think, how would people need to look at this situation, this circumstance, to feel like, oh my God, I have to have this, and if I didn't have it, my life would be worse. And then all of a sudden, price moves off the table. And in times of uncertainty, I promise you, price isn't what it's all about. That's a race to the bottom. In times of uncertainty, people buy because they want that certainty. And so how can you give people more certainty? Because if they buy from you or they buy from somebody cheaper, businesses will be going pop like that, like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And so you're going, do you recognise that? And if you frame that in and you say, they went, you think they could go, and they go, yeah. And you go, okay, so in this instance, if I could prove to you that we could never go and you've got more security, is that worth anything? Mm-hmm. It's worth something. You're asking the questions. And so making sure that you get that message out there and so people understand it, that's massive, because that brings in that consistency and also contrast, which is another influence principle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely echo what you said about how people feel about, certain scenarios, but also about how people feel about people, because at the end of the day, people do buy people. And just looking through like a LinkedIn perspective and a social selling aspect, I think in 2023, LinkedIn is a massive untouched opportunity for so many sales reps out there. We work with so many brands where the content and the personal branding is just so poor out there. And it's changed. We're now in a digital sales era, and I always kind of find when I talk to people, look at how society is changing. Like, people are actually meeting their partners online. They're meeting people on like Tinder. Like, literally the people they're going to get married to, they're going to spend the whole life to, they're meeting on social media. And if people argue that, you can meet your life partners on there, but you can't do business, it's absolutely insane. And I think there's for sales reps out there who want to excel at selling in 2023, I think LinkedIn and content marketing is an absolutely important one. And I think definitely what you've talked about from, the view lens of influence and persuasion, a lot of it can be applied to social selling about, social proof, authority. When you're advising sales teams, the individuals that you're working with, what do you see as kind of like the biggest opportunities? I mean, from us, we obviously see LinkedIn as a massive opportunity, but where do you think a lot of sales teams are falling down in? Is there any kind of traps you see time and time again people are falling down, or teams are just not considering?
I think one of the biggest things is making sure that you teach mindset. You teach a positive mental attitude in first. Yeah. Right. So it doesn't matter how good your skill set is. If your head's not on right, you'll never be successful. So teaching people positive mental attitude is the right mental attitude. So in any given set of circumstance, incorporating the plus traits of life. If you don't put that in as a process, so you can't let people go inert, you've got to remove people's right to be inert. That's massive, because then when you meet every week, people will then grow. They'll have that growth mindset, as Carol Dweck would talk about. And so we need people that are going to be proactive and on the front foot. So get the right people with the right mindset first, or teach the right mindset so they can't go there. There's a wonderful brand called Ritz-Carlton. I'm sure you've heard of them, right? Yeah. And when people go and work for Ritz-Carlton, they get 4 days training, right? And what they say is, we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, right? So when you put that brown suit on, you go out there, you don't get to act like Dave Thomson or Max Hanna or anybody else like that. You have to act like a professional that's going to be a professional. And I think it's too many times when we employ salespeople, we look at them, right, and we pull the sword out and we knight them and say, I'll knight these salesperson. right? And you look like a good guy and you've got the gift of the gab and you sold it at your last company. And I don't do any of that. And I don't think we should do any of that. What I think we should do is teach them the right mindset and then start teaching them negotiation, start teaching them about cognitive biases and shortcuts like the principles of influence, reciprocity, scarcity, liking, all of those lovely things. And then start teaching the people about how to reframe negative situations, how to use the principles of negotiation and how they work. Then we start building. And then we can start to add on. This is communication in 23. It's called LinkedIn, right? And everybody uses it. But when you go on there, you don't go on there having not been trained. You go on there and you've had the training and then you're giving people a chance. Give them a start, because then you're not knighting them and saying, go and do it. Like if I knighted you, I said, I'll tell you what, Max, you look like a really good kid. Or I'll tell you what we used to do. See that Jumbo 747, I want you to land it in JFK. What would you say?
I'll give it a go, mate, but I don't think the consequence would be good.
I've never been trained.
Yeah.
With salespeople, too many times we've taken them in, we're thinking, I'll tell you what, James, he looks like a really good guy. I think he should be able to sell. And I think that's the wrong way of doing it. We should train our people to be brilliant by teaching them the DNA of persuasion and influence. And then we put them on the opportunities. But the brilliant opportunities that come through from LinkedIn, right, they'll be half chances. But the best people will turn them into whole chances. And that's what will happen forever. Your half chances with trained people will be whole chances.
Yeah. Using the analogy of Tinder, ultimately a relationship, you have to meet them. Ultimately, any date, there's got to be a face-to-face. It's the same with LinkedIn. Like, it's not saying that every single sale can be done on LinkedIn. There's going to be a Teams call or face-to-face meeting. But I think what we're trying to say is that the Tinderization of sales, if you're not on Tinder or you're not on LinkedIn as an equivalent, you're not going to get you're not even going to get your opportunity to even sell. And so what you're saying is, like, as a modern salesperson, you need to lean into modern technology, lean into content marketing.
Yep.
But it's by no means the only thing you need to do. You still have to know how to sell, because ultimately once they're interested, that's when the selling begins.
Yep.
And in many ways, it sounds like then sort of content and sales teams need to become better marketeers and better sales professionals, sort of a double skill.
Yeah, totally. And so the two are similar. Ultimately, if you've got no leads, then you've got no sales. But what happens is people will think they've got no leads.
Yeah.
They'll say, I've got somebody that like my profile. What did you do? Did you go and find them? Did you go and work out how you could do that person a favour? Did you give them some praise? Did you go and buy a ticket? If you've got the right mental attitude, you'll reach out and you'll go above and beyond. But if you haven't, you won't do anything.
Where have you found more tension with sales professionals? Opportunity creation or selling the opportunity, like sell up the second part, just selling?
The most important part of sales is maximising the opportunities that are in front of you. Right. So what we did, if I go back to 2008, the last time there was a recession, or it was a mini recession compared to we started in 90, was instead of doing one thing for a client, either mortgage and a little bit of insurance, we did the mortgage, we did the insurance, we did the conveyancing, we did the critical illness cover, we did the health insurance. We started talking to clients about using the principle of scarcity and saying, look, in this situation, times are getting tough, the NHS queues and waiting lists are there. 3 reasons why you might consider buying health insurance: immediate treatment, immediate diagnosis, access to the best drugs in the location you choose. It's going to cost you £10 a week if you want it, or you can wait in the NHS. Which would you rather have, the queue or the wait? And people would go, well, actually, now you've thought about it, and it is, and I can see the queues are getting bigger, and you can see it again. Actually, we don't want to have those queues, because we would ask them, do you want to wait if you get ill? And they say, no. Do you want to wait? Do you want the drugs? And they go, yeah, I want the drugs. Well, you're going to have to either pay for them. You either pay for them at a time and you're going to need 100,000, or you pay £10 a week and you get health insurance. And people would buy, but you ask the right questions up front, and you do more than one thing with your customer. But you do more than one with your existing customer. It's got nothing to do with getting new customers. It's got more to do with getting more out of your existing customers. That's where the magic lies. It's going back to the well, where you're speaking to those people and developing stronger relationships with your existing customers and saying, what is possible that I could do with my existing customers? If you don't know, and you go and find out from other people that do know, that's the magic.
Existing is such a good point.
And you train your people to be better at it, and all of them, and you put systems and processes in the same way that if you worked, like when I worked in the shoe factory, there was a system for how they made those airwear boots, right? There's a system for it. And so the success system, it never fails. There's a system for it. And if you get the right mindset and the right system, and you do more for your customers in any time, you're going, it's tough. You're going, yeah, but we're brilliant. And they go, it's really easy. Yeah, I don't know, and we're brilliant. As long as you're brilliant and you're the best version of you, you'll always be successful. But you need your team with you, and if they've got the right mental attitude, oh my God, can you have some success? And it's fun.
Yeah. And do you remember, guys, this is obviously a live show, so do feel free to ask any questions in the chat as they come
There are
through.
some comments. I think the main one from Alex was that he actually did masters on online influence and persuasion, actually, and he said that actually writing my master's thesis on persuasion principles recently and got some interesting results. I found that sending a message with one tactic on LinkedIn, brackets, authority, social proof, scarcity, worked, but using two tactics at the same time didn't. So I don't know whether is that something which you just say?
So there's a guy called Daniel Kahneman who won a Nobel Prize for working out that as human beings we take shortcuts.
Yeah.
And so if we think somebody's trying to cook the pot, so when we make decisions, 95% of our decisions are based on how we feel, and we don't think things through. So if you think somebody's trying to overcook it and they're trying to do this and that, then it's like, I don't feel right about it.
Yeah.
But if you think somebody's trying to do something, they're doing you a favor, then ultimately you can feel right about it. But I'm not an expert in online marketing. I'm an expert in, if the leads are coming through and you've got the salespeople, how do you make them amazing?
Yeah.
And then also, how do you capitalize on the opportunity and get more from it?
Yeah.
So when we had our mortgage business, we used to get 260% of our income from the add-ons from the mortgage, not from the mortgage, because we did more with our people. And that's the magic. That's where it lies. So, and currently I'm working with the guys from a massive corporate business. Hire the right people and put in processes so you do more for your customers.
It sounds like you're leaning to the camp that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you would rather work with someone who is completely rubbish tactically but has a right mindset versus someone who is tactically astute, knows what they're doing, but doesn't have the right attitude.
Do you know what? It's just irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Oh, really?
Because ultimately, unless you know the DNA of persuasion and influence, which 99.99% of the world don't, then when you start and you say, tell me what you know. They go, I don't know that. Tell me what you know. So nobody knows.
Yeah.
And so if the mindset is discretionary, because they won't know what the right mindset is, and you say, is that right? And ultimately, you're asking questions with an outcome in mind. So I eat my own food. I understand what it is. I'm not bothered. It makes no difference to me. Ultimately, all you're trying to do is whoever's in front of you, whoever you're working with, you want to make them the best version of themselves, to maximize the opportunities, and also to bring that growth mindset into what they do.
So you feel confident you could train, even if this person was lazy, was terrible mindset. Do you think they, and by extension, they can be turned into good sales professionals?
Yeah, I've done it tons of times. I've turned, stories. Because ultimately, people aren't bad people. Everyone thinks they're clever. It's like the driving thing. Everyone thinks they're a good driver. Nobody thinks they're an average driver, but obviously some of us are not as good as others. Right? So, with regards to sales, it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. It's just, that's past history. It's not where we are now. It's where we're going. And ultimately, we're going into a recession. 23andMe, what are you going to do different? And for me, for what it's worth, bring all your people together and start training them on a weekly basis on the principles of influence. There's a great book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, Science and Practice. Get the latest edition. It's a yellow and blue cover. That's a great book. That's a great starting point. And then also teach about positive mental attitude. And if you want some help, Swader, give us a shout. Swader here.com is the Roman goddess of persuasion. Ultimately, this is what we do, but it's fun. In tough times, when everybody pulls together and you start celebrating successes, you appreciate them more. And it's not hard at all. It's not hard. It's not like people can do nothing. So what you got to do is persuade them to do the something with you. Do it with you and say, here's some options. Doing nothing, no. So you can either do this or this with me, which is one of the choices. Like when you're giving choices, give them a good, a better or a best option. People normally choose the better or the best option rather than just the good option. And there's loads of research behind, the stuff I'm showing you.
Yeah, that's it. And, if you kind of agree to the thesis that the decision-making process is hardwired in us, like it is a science, it's not, you're not just having to make it up. There is a science behind it. There is people are hardwired to take certain actions by certain inputs. And we've been working with you, Dave, now for a good couple of years, and we've gone through the course and we've found it really, really helpful at Swader. And you guys have got a really cool app as well, isn't it? Now
We've developed a world-class learning management system, and it's It's based on one thing. If I teach you something, how do I know if you know it?
Yeah, assessments.
Yeah, you teach me it back, right? And then you share it socially and everybody else comments on it. So we've created this learning management system whereby we teach you something and then you teach it back and then we sign you off as either competent or not competent. And that's magic.
I just had a question coming from Adam, which is a good question actually, which is actually new business. We spoke about account manager, also existing clients. He said that if you're targeted a new business, right, you can't go to existing customers. So how do you get those existing net new clients? Because he has his target is new business.
Totally, I love that.
Yeah.
Right? So, and guess where you go for new business? To your existing clients. But here's where you go for existing clients. There's a principle of consistency and reciprocity, right? So let's say, right, that I've done an amazing job for you, right? Let's say I'm Social Tree Global. I've done your social marketing. You've blown up on LinkedIn and you love it. What do you say to me? Do you say thank you or not thank you?
I say
Thank you. And I'll say, look, don't thank me, boys. Right? Do not thank me at all. Right? I don't expect you to thank me. But here's what I'd really like you to do. If in 1 year's time you're delighted with the service and it's still as good as it is right now, here's what I expect you to do for me. Right? Recommend me. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your friend, your next door neighbour, your brother, your sister, whoever it is, recommend me. Is that fair enough? And you'll say what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely. Right. And then what I do is in 11 months' time, I'll ring you up and say, James, Max, how's it going, boys? And you say, is it still as good? And obviously it is still as good. And you're saying it's still as good. I'll say, do you remember next month it's our review? You said you'd recommend me. It'd be great if you had somebody, one of your friends next door neighbours. You'll know another business like me, like your business, so you could recommend me to. And you'll say, yeah. Now, because you made the commitment, and also I've knocked back the yes or whatever, you feel like you owe me, right? So when next month I ring you up and you'll tell me this, you'll say, Dave, I've got somebody for you. Right, and I know I can tell you I did it. It's what made me the top mortgage consultant in the country. I've got somebody for you, right? That's where the change starts, right? But is that it done?
No.
Here's where the magic happens. If I ring you, if the person that you gave me, and let's say you said, I've got this guy over here, his name's Jimmy, and I say, Jimmy, how are you, Jimmy? And I go and I agree to meet Jimmy, and I say, James, Max, I've met with Jimmy. And he might do some business with me. And I'll say, I met with him again and he's definitely going to do some business with me. He's done some business with me. I've been paid. And I just want to say thank you. Right. And I'll tell you all my interactions with Jimmy. What's the next thing you say to me? Tell you what it is. Got another one for you. Got another one for you. If you keep that person in the loop, and I'll keep up, and I'll stay in touch with you, all of a sudden you become a recommender for me for new business. So your new business comes from your existing people. There's nobody better to do new business with you than your existing people. So as a mortgage advisor, I used to do it all the time. They'd be sending me, and I used to think, oh my God, I'm sick of this. Everybody keeps saying yes to me, and I'm going to have to do all this bloody paperwork. So your new business comes from your existing customers because they always know people.
Yeah. I completely agree with what you're saying about referrals. I do a lot of new business here at Social Tree, and we've got this campaign called ARC, Aggressive Referral Campaign, and it is all through referrals. It's really hard. The easiest way is to get a warm referral. That's where you get the highest close rates. And what we've been able to do on channels like LinkedIn is where you can actually see mutual connections. We might win a new account, and then we can see through LinkedIn all of their existing connections. Then we can ask for, ask for the referrals through understanding the networks through LinkedIn and getting the data on it, and that's been really powerful campaigns. I can't understand what people say.
So there's your new business.
Yeah, that's it. I can't understand people who aren't in account management and think, as a new business, I always need to find cold leads. But actually, it's all about growing that community and that network, inviting people to events and inviting someone else to an event, and just bringing that community. And LinkedIn's so powerful when it comes to that unlocking the hidden networks between there.
I just wanted to get through the question before we wrap up. There was another question which is talking about, it is to both David and to you, Matt, and to myself. I can ask to myself. What's the best way to help convince clients to look at investments and long-term planning when they are now more interested in the high interest rates they're getting and worried about falling market? Please scrap that. That's a question for David, because that's a much more of a financial planning question. So over to you on that one.
Okay, so why look at investments and long-term planning? So ultimately, people are sitting on their hands with regards to. So I'm guessing this. I'll make up the scenario. Yeah. People are sitting on their hands with regards to they don't want to look at investments right now because they can get 5% from a current account.
Yeah,
that's probably the status quo. But actually, if you contrast that and you say inflation is running at 10% and they're getting 5%, right? That means that they're only capitalizing on half the opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you look at that over any kind of period of time, if you're getting half what it's worth, half what it's worth, half what it's worth, you can ask them, why would you do any kind of investment in the first place? And they're going to say, because I want to make more money, because I want capital growth, because I want. Right, that's what people are going to tell you, and they're going to say, okay. So if I could show you, I could guarantee you that if you're investing in the wrong things, would you still want to carry on doing it, or would you want to know about it? But it's bringing that principle of consistency. So of course I'd want to know about it, and you'd say, well, okay, I've got this thing over here. It will give you 0.5% return guaranteed on investment. Do you want it? Go, no. I'll give you this over here. You're only going to lose half of inflation. Do you want it? No. Do you want this? 2/3? This is going to do 10% above inflation. And they could say, yeah, okay, I'd look at that. But you've got to contrast and get people to agree on what the reason for the investment is in the first instance, and then showing them that if they got this much, it wouldn't be good, this much good. And if they got halfway there, it's still not good. It's still never going to take them towards their goal in the first instance. You say, so if what you're telling me is right, you're not going to do it. And then you offer them 3 solutions. You can either put all your money into investments and you stand a chance, you can put half, or you put 20%, but you get them to take a step, and then you prove in 12 months' time if it's done better, and then maybe move a little bit more, but you contrast it.
That's really nice. And that was someone was talking about good, better, and best. He said, I remember that for a long time. It makes a big difference. Start with the best and work your way down the options. And there's more things coming now from Martin. Said, David, knowing and working with you for 25 years, you reminded me of my day activities a few years ago. 2 A's, you are an authority with authenticity. Have really enjoyed your company this afternoon. So that wasn't a question, it was a compliment. So that was really nice, and I love that. You kind of framed that good, better, and best, and a few people have said they really like that. So yeah, that's
it's linked to the principle of reciprocity. So ultimately, if I say to you, I've got this option for you, this is our biggest option, and you say that's not, you say, well, I thought you might say that, so I've done you a favour and I've done you something else, and then there's something else. And it's to do with the moment of power after no. When somebody says no to you, if you say no to them, how do you feel?
Yeah,
you feel bad inside. You think, oh, he's saying no.
When you did that thing, the thank you thing.
Yeah, it is.
And that was the question about about referrals. Like, don't say thank you to me, because then they've given you something. You say, no. Give me a referral. Yeah. Right.
So the moment of power after no is when somebody says no to you. They say that you feel bad. They say, look, thanks for what you've done, but no, it's not for me. It's a bit expensive. Right. There's a moment of power after somebody says no to you, and if you know what to put in that moment of power after somebody says no to you, right, you've got a much better chance of being successful than you ever have of going away and then coming back the next day. And it's to do with the principle of reciprocity. And you say, look guys, I thought you'd say that, so I prepared another proposal for you. Took me some time, but I thought you might say no. And it's not got all of the whistles and bells that this has got in it, but it's a starter. It's going to get you going. It's this. He's saying, if that doesn't work, I've got whatever for you. You think, well, the chances of you getting a yes to the second request, if you make it in that moment, are significantly higher, and this is all backed by behavioural science, than what they are as if you just ask for one proposal. So whenever you're making a proposal to a client, you should all say, this is our Olympic package, this is amazing, this is Qatar fireworks, it's the lot, it's the whatever, and you say, this is the best, and they say, no, it's not that. You say, okay, and here's our next best option, this is a really good option, whatever, it's better than whatever, and then here's our basics. Which one's going to be right for you? And you'll see this everywhere. And it's linked to reciprocity and doing people favours, and your chances of being successful are there. And if you're offering one option is no option at all, because it's either do it or don't do it. It's binary. Two's a dilemma, and if you've got a dilemma, what do? You're going to speak to somebody else. You're going to say, and they'll say, no, don't do it with them, go somewhere else. If you've got 3 options, a good, a better, and a best, it's the illusion of choice, and it works beautifully. If you're not putting this into your sales talks when you work with somebody right now, then you're missing it. And also, you might think, well, there's no way we can do it. We offer one product. Extend the guarantee, right? You can do loads of things with your products to make a good, a better, and a best option.
There's a question from Barry who said, hi, David, it's Barry from Jitterbits.
Yeah.
How do you advise growing sales teams in 2023 who have basic training on MEDDICC, etc.? I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
What can they do beyond their basic value selling approaches? By the way, we've got 5 minutes left, so if you need more questions, get them in now, because we can't be here all afternoon because David's a very busy man. So that's the next question.
Okay, so you've got a basic sales team. So the first thing is build a client journey that's optimal, that you all buy into. So for me, what I did in 2008 was I built a David Thomson client journey. And that client journey was steeped in behavioural science. And then I trained my people on behavioural science so that they knew 100% when they went out to a customer, this journey, this conversation that I'm having is well considered. It has framing, it has negotiation, it has future pacing marketing, it has good and bad anchors, it has all the influence principles. And then they felt like they'd put their brown suits on like they did in Ritz-Carlton. They're like, we now know, right, we're absolutely equipped to go out and do a job and be massively successful. And when you meet every week and they say we've come in with these wins, you think, it's the system. They trust the system. In everything else, they trust the system. So you build a sales process that's based on behavioral science and then watch the sales come in. And then the other thing is hire new people, hire clean people that have never done it before, that have got the right attitude, values and mindsets. And that's another thing about now. People are getting made redundant. So you're never going to get a better opportunity to get brilliant talent and then train that talent on the right skill sets, framing, negotiation, positive mental attitude, and they will go out and they'll run through walls for you. Where some of your existing people that you might think, well, do you know what? They're not the best. I'm going to bring in some new ones and bring in some new ones.
Yeah. I love the idea of a process steeped in behavioral science.
It's got to be.
When you look at like, you know, the World Cup that's going on at the moment, like all the teams, they have a process, you know, the players have a process, they know what they're doing, they trust the process. And then, and for a long time at Social Tree, we were guilty of not having a process ourselves. So, and then at least if you are having issues, you can diagnose where in the process it's going wrong. Because, but yeah, so
you can't imagine a dentist not having a process.
So
ultimately it'd be painful.
Yeah.
There was just a question from Adam who was asking for the name of the book right at the start, similar to Influenced by Cialdini, but not that.
No, so the book at the start that changed my life was called The Success System That Never Fails. The Success System That Never Fails, by a guy called William Clement Stone. He was born to a single parent. He lived till he was 100. He became a billionaire. And he created the Aon Corporation. And I read his book. I went to work for his company before I went to work for the Connells Group and became their top financial advisor, William H. Brown. And, you know, that was an amazing book. Changed my life. An amazing book.
One last question, David. It was a comment from Luke. Hello, Luke. When working as an advisor for President Richard Nixon, the political mastermind Henry Kissinger would give him a variety of options when dealing with situations, while subtly hinting at the right decision. It gave Nixon the feeling of power, as he had options. It's very interesting you say that, because actually there was a tale about I think it was Michelangelo who done the Sistine Chapel, Da Vinci or someone, and he used the same principle. One of the guys who was commissioning said, I don't want a pillar in Sistine Chapel, because if it's in the pillar, it's going to ruin it. He's like, you're not gonna persuade him, right? So what he did is he done exactly what you're saying around what Kissinger was saying, was he gave them options, all three of which were the outcome he wanted anyway.
Totally.
But you gave them the illusion of choice.
So what you do is you use the thing called questions of the answers.
Yeah.
You ask the people, you think about what answers would they need to give to questions to think your idea is the right idea. If I say it, you doubt it, but if I get you to say it, it's true. So what I need to think about is, what would it need to be that you would need to say that would make it so that you think, I have to do social selling, I have to understand my DNA, the DNA of persuasion and influence. And then you ask them that question. You say, are you people trained or not trained? You say, well, I mean, what I mean is that they're optimally trained. They absolutely know their stuff. Do they do stuff on social or not on social? Should they be doing stuff? And they say absolutely. So if there was a way that they could do stuff on social and they'd be optimally trained, would they be better off or worse off? You start asking those questions and framing those scenarios and painting those pictures, and then ask questions that are going to move them from there to where you want them to go. Then they're way more likely to be successful. And that's the key to success in any environment, asking the right questions, because then people will be, especially in this country, consistent with commitments they've made.
Nice. Well, David, I think we've covered a lot there in an hour. We probably could have talked all day, and we probably will end up talking all day, but I'd like to thank our audience there for taking part in the live. Some good questions coming through. Make sure to follow Social Tree, as we are going to be doing regular lives throughout 2023, dropping knowledge bombs with some great guests such as David.
Next week we've got live.
Next week we've got another one.
LinkedIn 2030 is going to be a really interesting deep dive into the future. We're going to be talking about the future of work, talking about the future of sales. We've kind of touched on it with David. We're also going to be talking about the B2B metaverse and what kind of experiences you can be thinking about for 2020, 2030. So stick around.
Yeah, and if people want to stay in touch with you, David, what's the best way to...
So guys, pleasure to talk to you today. Obviously, I run a business and we teach the science of persuasion and influence. Our business is called Suada, Suada, and it's the Roman goddess of persuasion. That's who she was. And so we like to think that if you want to persuade, you want to persuade like a goddess. So if any of you guys want to learn more about the science of persuasion and influence, how you can be successful sales masters, then drop me a note, david@suada.com. Alternatively, just hook me up on LinkedIn, and more than happy to get involved, help you with your team. And here's what I'd say to you is anything we do carries a risk reversal. I guarantee will make you significantly better. You'll be delighted with it. Well, it's free, completely free.
And we'll put a link in the comments so you can check it out.
Cool. Have a fantastic Friday, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks a
everyone.
lot.
Cheers.
Go England.